How's it going, folks? So today I'm going to talk about 10 years of sobriety. And earlier this month in December, I acquired 10 years of being off alcohol and drugs. In this video, I want to give just a brief overview of how my journey over the 10 years has changed my life and the good parts of it. And later on in a different video, I'll go over a lot of struggles over the 10 years, and mostly just talk about ways that I've gotten past all those times in my life that have gotten hard. For now is more like a celebration of what it's like to have 10 years of sobriety. In the beginning, I moved from Hawaii all the way out to Minnesota. I went to a treatment center for 30 days. I lived in a sober house for almost a year. The good parts about living in the sober house for me were having people around that, for one thing, I went to treatment with, and people really held me accountable there. It was really hard to see the progress at first because I saw my progress each day, and a huge moment was about 6 months into my sobriety. My dad came out for a visit. I showed him the sober house, my job, all these things, and just kind of how I reset my life. I took him to a AA meeting at one point, and I had 6 months, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It didn't hit me until he actually gave me my coin, and then he kind of talked about the parts of his life that he struggled through my actions. And it was the first time I kind of saw through a family member how my sobriety really affected others around me, the people that love me. And a big thing for him was waking up, hearing at 5 a.m., hearing a call, to a call, wondering if, I was going to be not there anymore. That was a huge monumental moment for me that first year. And after that, I really took my sobriety a lot more serious. I wasn't so much doing it for my family and just making sure everything looked okay, but I started diving deeper into my relationship with a God concept, my divinity and God, and just all these other elements that I never took into play. I think I was agnostic at the time. And when I moved out, that was a huge moment as well within that first year, because I was kind of on my own. I had less accountability, but the people I moved out with were people from the sober house, and that really helped me to have that support, have people around me that I got sober with, and whether or not they were struggling, we were all in it together. We were still going to meetings and stuff like that, and that really helped me progress into sort of this lifestyle I wanted to transition into. I was traveling and doing all these fun things in my life, but I had never done them sober. And a big thing for me was getting out and having more adventures and trying to spend as much time outside. So the second year, I got into rock climbing, built a big community with that. I also found something in Minnesota that I could appreciate. Seeing how Colorado has the mountains and certain aspects to it that I really loved and enjoyed, and same thing with Montana. There's all these elements there that I really enjoyed, and I think going up to the Boundary Waters really opened my eyes into what Minnesota had to offer, at least the Midwest, because I was so used to terrain, and I think there was a bit of having to calm down, relax a little bit more. Going on trips with friends that gave me support really helped me do the next big thing. Throughout the first couple to 3 years, I just saved up a lot, still went to meetings, had some pretty good jobs. I worked at a coffee shop, worked in fine dining. I began to cycle a lot more for entertainment rather than commuting. Throughout that, I met some amazing people here in Minneapolis that kind of took me under their wing, and they showed me how to have fun on a bike in a way where we did alley cat races, endurance races, any group ride. A lot of people would just get together and we would just go down to the beach by the river. And I think that was a good a support system beyond sobriety, because whether or not they were partying, it helped me see how to have interests and stick to it and know that like I didn't have to drink to be a part of that group. The fact that I loved to cycle was like a big thing, and it was nice to be around people that helped me learn how to maintain my bike, how to route. Well, I guess what was cool, people supported themselves through the community, so that helped me, and it really helped me with like my photography. And I remember shooting a lot of photos and getting into more cycling photography and like using that as a tool for me to either show people how I saw the world. And the amount of support from that group was like amazing. I met some amazing friends, and there was a good time where that was just like all I could think about. And from that point of being in that community, I decided to leave Minneapolis. My grandmother passed away, and I was kind of missing home, and I wanted to sort of amend a lot of relationships back home, and I was going back home every once in a while, but I wanted to spend some time back home and see what life was like being away from like these communities that helped build me up, and see how life, you know, if I can continue on to like the next adventure. And so my dad came pick me up, and then I think that was the beginning of 2014. My grandmother was probably the biggest influence in my life for doing great things, and she always supported me, and she was such a beacon of like information, and everyone looked up to her, and she was so important in our lives that at that time I needed to do something big. And ultimately my goal was to not live my life and have something like a bike tour be on my mind till I'm on my deathbed. And I was like, you know, I should have did this. This was an opportunity for me to do something alone and do something big. That I think the biggest thing about cycling was you can set all these little goals from day to day. And it was something I learned through getting sober, that if you do these little increments of like travel each day in a bike tour, then you see a progress. And there's moments that you leave on the road that I really appreciated and I live with till this day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my time on the road. And it might not have been the best trip or the greatest thing ever, but for me it was something big enough and something I could share in my life that I could pass on, and hopefully someone else is able to do something in their life that isn't gonna be with them on their deathbed. And that was one thing that while I was preparing, I talked to my grandfather, and he was trying to understand a lot of why I was planning this bike tour. And he's like, why do you want to bike all the way from Montana to California? And at that time we were driving back, and he asked me that. I asked him, what's the one thing in your life that you wanted to do and your family didn't support you? And he said, moving to Alaska. And I said, well, what did you do? He's like, I moved to Alaska. And I said, well, think about that context with like wanting to travel and adventure. I said, it kind of holds the same context, because this is something I have been thinking about for so long that it's kind of burning inside of me. So that was sort of him allowing himself to like be okay with it. And then at that time he ended up buying me like a tent. And to me that was like such a good, I mean, I use that tent till this day. I have like a lot of memories in it, but it was nice to have those conversations with people and kind of understand in myself like why I needed to do things like that. And I'll talk about that in like a different video. And so I did that trip. I amended like a friendship through that trip, and ultimately I got to live with my sister. And that was, to me, it was like the biggest project for me to show my sister how I've changed like through the years, and live with her and her husband for a little bit. And through that, I was biking every day. I got to work at a coffee roastery and meet some amazing people. I think overall, the biggest journey at that time was really connecting back with my mom. And, you know, her and I were like, both so stubborn and, you know, two peas in the pod or whatever that concept is. But the times we butted heads, you know, that was just like our way of like showing each other how much we loved each other. But through sobriety at that time, like it really showed me how I could like show up for like my mom. And the last probably 3-4 years of her life, it was really nice to be able to like humble myself and just know where I fit into how I was reacting to things. And my mom would always make trips out, and like she allowed me to be me. I think she saw through me struggling so much with alcohol and all that stuff like that. I think she blamed herself a lot, but overall it was my relationship to it, and the best thing I can do is just like be a good son to her. So the next big adventure I had planned was traveling out to Southeast Asia. And my mom was like super supportive of that decision, and she was always very supportive of me traveling and kind of experiencing things and being able to like find dreams and like execute them, because that's kind of ultimately how she set our lives up for. And it was nice to have that support and had everything planned out. Had moved back to Minneapolis for a couple months, and I was trying to pass through here and go out to Southeast Asia for a little bit. And about 2 weeks before I left, my mom passed away. And a week later, I'm at this funeral, and it's really hard, and you know, have to bury my mother. And I'll talk about that in a different video. I'll get more in depth with it. But at the time, it was a hard decision to make, because I just wanted to stay home. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna like not go on this trip. And a lot of family members are like, you gotta go, you gotta go out there, and your mom would have wanted you to, and of course she would have, you know, she would have supported that idea 100%. And so I decided to go on this trip, and the good parts of it were it gave me time to sort of isolate and sort of kind of kind of have something new, not anything stagnant. So it was a balance of like hard times, but there was like so much growth in that time, and especially being so far away from like my family and stuff like that. I still had that support while I was out there. There were really hard times, and so when I got out to Bali, it was nice to be out there and kind of see like how the world was, and I'll get into that in another video. And then I got to Thailand. I kind of hit a roadblock there. I almost like flew back, and then people were encouraging me like, just go to India. And so I did. You know, I got to the yoga teacher training, and it taught me a lot about, I think that was exactly what I needed at the time, and I'll get more into that in another video. But the support was like amazing, and I came back, I planned another bike tour, and I think for the next couple of years, I had been kind of traveling and dealing with like my mom's stuff on the back burner. And the good parts of it were I was able to have a daughter in this time. It was about a year after my mom had passed away. And don't get me wrong, it was like super hard, and all this growth and stuff had happened through that, but it was time for me to pass on the torch of how my parents raised me. And at times I felt really lost, but the things that I gained from staying sober throughout this whole process have paid dividends in my soul, and I'm still trying to figure out how to be like a great dad and a great, you know, co-parent, great son. All these things still come up, and I think overall, when I look at my daughter, that sort of solidified the choices I had made to get sober 10 years ago from drugs and alcohol. And I see how it benefits. Like some days I feel like I'm like hanging on by a thread, but then I go back to times where I was drinking and trying to survive then. And then I go through all these experiences over the past 10 years, and it's like, wow, I wouldn't have been able to do this and that and this and that and plan this and have a lot of aspirations for life. And then I have my daughter right in front of me, and it helps me to try and look at being a parent as best as I can, because I only know how to love the best way I can. And if that makes sense to you as a parent, then that is great. That is something I have acquired in my mentality over the years, is the fact that no matter how much your relationship with your parents is good or bad, they are raising you the best way they know how to. And within that, they're raising you the best way they know how to love. And it was like how they were brought up. So if you can see life through that, then it should help you a bit to support yourself through all that. Because for me, when I see that my mom had it worse than me, or maybe not worse, but like it was a different circumstances of life, it helps me look at my daughter and not raise her in spite of what I didn't get growing up. I look at it as I want to raise my daughter in the way that my mom never got raised, you know. I'm in paying that forward. So I have to really look inside and keep working on things every day and just like support my daughter the best way I know how, and definitely look at the good fundamental aspects of like what my mom provided me. She really gave me independence. My dad gave me a lot of independence. He was like super encouraging growing up, and you know, there were like the negative aspects about that, but they were just trying to do the best that they could. So I'm trying to translate that into like my own relationship with my daughter. So overall, with this channel, I want to talk about these things and let you in on something that people, you know, of 10 years may or may not be able to talk about. There's family members that don't even know that I got sober, didn't even know that I had this whole other life that I barely even remember. So overall, in this channel, I want to talk about things in my life that inspire me, my journey through having adventures, you know, my stories of like photography and stuff like that. And in the comment section, you can even talk about, you know, struggles in your life, and maybe we can keep this as an ongoing conversation and whatnot. And if you want to subscribe, you know, we're going to try to do something once a week, maybe every 2 weeks, depending on my schedule. So, yeah, shout out to my family in Montana. We're going through a hard time due to COVID, and we've lost a lot of family members the past couple of months, and that's something I can chat about later on, and my process through this whole time. Also, down on the link, I want to raise just a little bit of money for some family members that have creative futures, and I want to support them in that. And what better way to have the viewership help me along that journey, because I can only give so much support. But yeah, look out for the next video, and thanks for clicking on this, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys.